What's up guys, it's Punchy, and we're back with another Runeslayer video. This one's for the bonus content crowd, but don't worry, I'm still locked in with Deepwoken and making videos. But if you know me, you know I love breaking games with ridiculous builds, and today, it's Runeslayer's turn to get absolutely destroyed. Let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into Priest, one of the most outright broken classes in Runeslayer. Now, let me be clear, this is all based on my own experience, and I'm not here to tell you how to play. But this class is way too busted to just ignore. Playing Priest isn't exactly brain dead, but there's something about it that just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe it's the absurd sustain, the near endless utility, or just how effortlessly it can turn fights around from a distance. But either way, let's break this class down and see why it's so crazy. For starters, a lot of players in the community seem to think Priest is just the worst class in the entire game, or it's just a support class. And honestly, who can really blame them? This has unmatched healing, busted shields, constant buffs, and even full-on resurrections, so Priest easily has the best support potential in the entire game, and nobody's debating that. But today, we're not here to talk about support. What most people overlook is how fundamentally broken this class is outside of its usual support role. If you're only using Priest to back up your team, you're missing out on just how insane this class can be in a fight. When it comes to both PvP duels and PvE boss farming, Priest isn't just a support powerhouse, it's a damage dealing menace. This class has some of the most absurd mechanics in the game, letting you shred through bosses and outplay players without even taking damage. It's almost unfair how much sustain, utility, and raw power Priest brings to the table, and let's talk about it. For starters, let's break down how Priest actually works and why you might be playing them completely wrong. Trust me, I was also struggling pretty hard until I figured this out, and I fixed it. A lot of players in the community fall into the trap of thinking that Priest is just a walking medkit, but that's selling the class pretty short. With that being said, there are real pitfalls that inexperienced players run into, and if you want to dominate as Priest, you gotta overcome this. The first intrinsic strength of Priest is the absurd range damage, which is insanely spammable with almost zero risk. Every single attack Priest has is near auto-aimed, pierces through targets, and just deals flat out great damage. On top of that, most players in the game and mobs have little to no holy defense since it's such an obscure stat. This means Priest is almost always at an advantage in any fight. I'll be breaking down each of these broken, borderline undefendable attacks in a second, but trust me, they hit way harder than they probably should be. Another huge advantage, and one we're probably all familiar with, is Priest's insane healing, defense, and buffs. Multipliers stack effortlessly on both you and your team, last pretty long, and they do make a massive impact on gameplay. The stat buffs alone are seriously underrated, and you could try them out. Now, on the support side, dying in PvE is nearly impossible if you're playing correctly. Between healing your team, sustaining yourself with self-heals, and rotating Holy Shield, there's almost nothing that can take you down, and that's crazy. So those are some of the upsides, but let's talk about the big downside, because trust me, this is probably why you're struggling as a Priest. The mana drain is straight up brutal. Every single spell eats through your mana bar like crazy, and if you're spamming abilities, which you should be, you're gonna run dry before your cooldowns even reset. If you watch any Priest gameplay, you'll notice they're always dangerously low on mana, and here's the worst part, there's no real easy fix or passive way to solve this. Unlike some of the other classes, Priest doesn't naturally regenerate mana at a fast enough rate to keep up, but there is a method to fix this. In my honest opinion, the best way to play Priest is to fully maximize your magic critical chance and spam every single rune slot and equipment bonus into intellect. There's actually a hidden gem in this setup, Radiant Spirit, which is an ability that boosts your intellect while you also invest in spirit. However, do keep in mind it's not a 1-to-1 ratio and its impact is a bit reduced, so if you go spirit, you're gonna get less intellect. But if you're looking to boost your damage potential and your magical crit rate, investing in intellect might be better than spirit. Now, sure, if you want a more well-rounded build with extra health, mana, and mana regen, you could go spirit, but around here, we don't mess around with that. It's all about pumping out crazy damage and maximizing your critical rate. Critical damage is super huge for your output, making every single hit count for even more. You can also proc damage over time effects with certain staffs which are based off critical rate, I'm pretty sure, which benefits from critical chance, which adds up even more damage. And of course, critical healing, sometimes even blessing yourself. If you get super lucky and heal a ton with a critical heal, you can save a ton of mana. One of the best procs in the entire game is Angelic Wings, which boosts mana regen and cooldown regen, but I'm not too sure if it's affected by magic crit multipliers. Still, the mana regen is nice, but for me, I'd rather focus on maximizing damage and healing potency rather than wasting my rune slots on just spirit. Also, if you activate Clarity, another spell, you can use any spell for free while boosting its critical heal rate up, which is very important to maintain your mana. For runes, I'm slapping Intellect on everything wherever possible because boosting that stat is the core of this build. On top of that, the Purity rune buffs up holy damage, and Suvira's legendary ring further amplifies it. These buffs stack up and make for some insane output on your damage and healing where everything aligns. Just to be clear, my slot is nowhere near fully min-maxed to perfection, but the class alone is fundamentally broken and it does not matter at all. Now, let's get into the damaging moves and break them down. This is where things get really interesting, and honestly, it's just insane. As a priest, I believe the only moves that you should be using to attack should come from the priest class. If you're not using flame spells, there's nothing really here that's gonna outclass what we already have, so it's good enough. This isn't like the other mage classes. If you're sticking with holy damage, you gotta make the most of it. The two staple skills of priest are gonna be smite and greater smite, and this is where the real fun begins. These are essentially auto-aim, hit scan, orbital laser strikes that deal pure holy damage and can pierce through enemies down below. In many boss fights or against enemies that stack up, Smite's insane damage can shred them in seconds. The best part, the cooldown isn't even high, and the range is absurd. You can jump around during boss fights just spamming these, and it's enough to melt down any enemy. In Runeslayer, no other class can do this, and that's just ridiculous. Also, Greater Smite's behavior is much of the same fundamentally, dealing more damage, costing more mana, and overall having a longer windup. If you cycle Smite and Greater Smite, your damage is gonna be off the charts. But in PvP, that's where this truly becomes broken. Sniping players with Smite is essentially an instant hit scan laser beam that auto-aims, making it unpunishable 9 out of 10 times. Sure, players can try to parry or block this, but it's so fast and you're so far away that they're usually left with zero counterplay and they can just defend. Now, with Greater Smite, the move does the same exact thing but with a twist. It ragdolls players, sending them flying into the air and preventing them from moving forward. I think it's really funny that if you cycle between Greater Smite and normal Smite, the windup is going to be different since one is slower, and that's unreactable. Both attacks have the same exact animation, but one's slower, so there's no way for the opponent to know which one's coming out until it's too late. The mind games, range, and damage with this move are just insane. Let's talk about Holy Fire. This spell is yet another auto-aim, ranged, instant attack that deals holy damage on the initial splash, followed up by damage over time that ticks through opponents. On the surface, it might seem like the damage isn't anything special, but it's a passive DPS which you can easily apply while dodging around and sniping with your other spells. Whether against bosses or regular mobs, you should always keep your burn active, and it's just so flexible and effective in combat. Now, in PvP, it's on a whole nother level and just breaks the game. This spell is a free, unpreventable damage over time debuff which you can slap onto players without any defense. So here's the issue. When you parry the initial damage, yes, that's gonna stop the hit, but the burn itself still remains and goes through parry, slowly ticking down their HP. Trust me, this is so broken and annoying to deal with, and nearly impossible to counter. Once again, Priest almost has everything. It has range mix-ups with crazy damage, unpreventable burn ticks, healing, stat boosts, and of course the damage reduction. It's downright insane and really fun to play. For now though, that's all I really have to say about Runeslayer's Priest, and there's a lot more potential that people are seeing. There's room to explore and even more busted synergies that I haven't talked about, but it can get crazy. That's it for right now, but please leave your thoughts down below. Big thanks to everyone who supports the channel, it really means a lot. If you want even more content, you can join up down below. For updates or to reach out directly, hop into my Discord, and if you want to play with my Deep Oaken guild, there's also a link down below. Finally, join my UGC group and cop the new drip since I'm dropping new stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe since I'm almost at 110k subs. Have a good one, it's punchin' time.